ARTMakers was made possible by the San Luis Obispo County Office of Education, Studios on the Park in Paso Robles, and the Arts Collaborative.
Hi, I'm Jessamine Pattison, and I am here at Studios on the Park in Paso Robles, and we are going to talk about folk art and Grandma Moses today. You're never too old to start something new. That could be the title for the life of Grandma Moses. Anna Mary Moses, who became known as Grandma Moses in the art world, was an American artist who started painting at the age of 75. She did not go to art school, and her paintings reflect a simple and straightforward style with little concern for traditional perspective, proportion, and volume. She did not paint using fine art techniques. Instead, what her style captures is an authentic memory of life in the country. Folk art is the art of everyday people who may or may not have any artistic training. Folk art lets us learn about a community's culture and values. It helps us understand the lives of people. What did they enjoy doing? How did they see the world? Weather vanes can be folk art, as well as tribal masks from Nigeria. American Indian folk art includes baskets, totem poles, and beadwork on pouches and bags. Here is an example of African American folk art. Colorful Day of the Dead costumes and decorations are Mexican folk art dating back to the time of the Aztecs. Folk art gives us the opportunity to look into the past and see what culture and life was like for a community of people. Grandma Moses is a famous and inspirational American folk artist. Anna Mary was born in 1860 on a farm in rural New York. She was one of 10 children who worked around the house and out in the fields very early in life. She did not have much of a formal education because there simply wasn't enough time. While chores filled her days, she was always artistically inclined. As a child, she was inspired by her father, who once painted landscapes on the walls of their family home. He encouraged her artistic talent by bringing home paper and colored chalk, a treat that she treasured. When Anna Mary was 12, she left home and went to work at a neighboring farm. Years later, she met a handyman named Thomas Salmon Moses, who became her husband. Anna Mary and Thomas had 10 children, and her life revolved around caring for her family and managing the household. While farm life and motherhood were very demanding, she managed to carve out time to stay creative with embroidery and quilting. That's what her life was like for about 50 years. When Anna Mary was in her 70s, she developed arthritis, a condition that makes the joints in your fingers stiff and sore. Because of her arthritis, embroidery and quilting was too painful for Anna Mary. Her sister suggested that she try painting instead. Anna Mary gave it a try and liked it. Anna Mary is what we call self-taught. She liked to draw, but she never attended an art class or had a teacher show her how to paint. She painted small canvases for her friends and family. At first, she copied postcards and magazine illustrations. Gradually, she began to recreate scenes from her childhood memories. Her paintings feature beautiful rolling hills and farms. They're happy and colorful, with lots of folks working and playing together. While Anna Mary's life was filled with hard work, she also found joy in family and community. Her paintings reflect the comfort found in predictable, everyday life. Anna Mary was not trying to launch a career as a painter. She just liked being creative and painting. A friend who owned a drugstore in a neighboring town asked if she could display a few paintings in the window. Anna Mary's art was in that window for 2 years until an art collector named Lois Calder walked by the window and her paintings caught his eye. He liked them so much that he bought them all. Then he asked if he could come to her home and buy more. Mr. Calder believed in Anna Mary's talent. For the next few years, he took her paintings to museums and galleries in New York City. At first, they were not interested in her paintings, especially when people found out that Anna Mary was 78 years old. Mr. Calder did not give up, and in 1939, 3 of her paintings were selected for a large exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. That led to another exhibition in 1940. This time, Anna Mary was the only painter on display in the gallery. That's called a solo exhibition. A newspaper reporter wrote a review of her work. In his news story, he called her Grandma Moses, and the name stuck. She was 80 years old. Grandma Moses was surprised by all the attention. She said, "If they want to make a fuss over me, I guess I don't mind." Grandma Moses's favorite subjects were landscapes showing happy scenes of rural life, changing seasons and weather, rolling hills, and abundant crops. The people in her paintings are actively engaged in farm life, something she had experienced for many years. By this time, her husband, Thomas, had passed away and her children were grown and living their own lives. Painting became a welcome way to occupy her time. Grandma Moses's artworks became very popular everywhere. Her paintings were exhibited in America as well as European cities, including Paris. Even though her paintings were traveling the world, Grandma Moses remained at home on her farm. Turkeys is a classic Grandma Moses painting depicting the annual Thanksgiving ritual of catching a holiday bird. The November sky in early snow looks cold. It's contrasted with bright colors of the turkeys and the people. Grandma Moses painted many winter scenes of farm life. Here, the people are taking some time away from chores to have fun in the snow at Christmas time. In this painting, children are carving pumpkins, bobbing for apples, and running around dressed as ghosts on Halloween. Notice how her paintings feature cultural activities that are very popular in America, such as Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Halloween. Folk art captures how a community lives and works. During the winter months, one fun social event is when neighbors work together to collect tree sap and produce maple syrup. This painting captures the value of a community helping each other to get work done. The thunderstorm has several levels of action. The clouds are dark and ominous. The trees whip and bend in the wind. A farmer rushes to bring in the hay, and in the background, a frightened black horse runs in terror. In this painting, we see an automobile. Usually, she only painted horses and wagons. She did not include tractors or other types of modern mechanized equipment that would have been used during her lifetime. Her paintings are considered romantic because she idealized the old ways of working on a farm. The art of Grandma Moses captured the hearts of the people, as well as art collectors. She became so popular that the governor of New York proclaimed her birthday on September 7th as Grandma Moses Day. Grandma Moses published her autobiography called My Life's History in 1952 when she was 92 years old. In 1969, Grandma Moses had a stamp issued in her name showing her painting July the 4th, and she was on the cover of Time magazine. Grandma Moses got up to paint at 6:30 in the morning. During this chapter in her life, she painted more than 1,600 canvases. Between the ages of 100 and 101, the last year of her life, she painted 25 works of art.
What sort of advice would you give to those people if they had time to try their hand at painting?
Well, anybody can paint that wants to paint.
Can they?
Oh, sure. Sure, anybody can paint.
Grandma Moses broke through the barriers of what was considered art. Her paintings motivated art critics to take notice and to value and respect folk art. But most of all, she just reminds us that you can be creative at any age. Hi, I'm Jessamine Pattison here at Studios on the Park in Paso Robles, and we are going to make some art together with the inspiration from Grandma Moses, the folk artist. So welcome. I'm going to ask that we just take a deep breath in together. And you can close your eyes if you want, because we are going to picture a time in our recent past where we spent some time with our community. So maybe a time where you had a party or had an outdoor event with them. Maybe you built something together, and you can take more time to do this off camera, but that's just where I would start thinking of, what do I want to paint? What would I like to paint? Grandma Moses painted lots of farms and her rural community in New York. And I'm here in California, so I painted some rolling hills and just someone hanging out their clothes to wash. And that's one thing that Grandma Moses did also. My dad, who made some art with me yesterday, actually did himself with a surfboard in El Morro down in Southern California with the cove here. So from memory, this is what Grandma Moses did. That was her specialty. So you're gonna need some watercolor paper. That's best if you want to use watercolor. If you decided you'd like to just use colored pencils, that's all right as well. So I have some watercolor pencils, which are my favorites. You can draw with them and add water, or add water and then draw with them, but you don't need those to make artwork today. I also just have some regular colored pencils. And then I have watercolors. And I wanted to show you, this is my little portable art box, my art box, and I bring it with me. I have my watercolors, I have some pencils and some pens. I was able to put both of my colored pencils in there also. And then I have with me watercolor paintbrushes. And this is a pretty cool paintbrush. It has water in the stick or the handle of it, and you don't have to bring water with you wherever you go. So we will take our watercolor paper first. You could decide if you want it on the bumpy side or the smooth side. Today I'm going to use the smooth side. We will take our pencils and we're going to markate or make a mark where we want the foreground, middle ground, and background to be on our papers. And if that doesn't make sense to you right now, we're going to learn together what those mean. But you can have your adult help you, or if you're an adult, we can go ahead and make 3 lines. And I like to turn my paper sideways when I make long lines. So one's going to be in the first third. We're basically going to cut it into thirds. Okay, and the foreground comes before, it's in the front. The middle ground is in the middle, it's the middle of the sandwich, and the background is in the back. I have this fun activity, if you would like. That's why I have some scissors. You can get any kind of magazine that has landscapes in them and find something where you can have a foreground, middle ground, and a background. And I know this has shine on it, so we'll take a closer look later, but I'm going to use this picture of a man, a statue with a horse, and I'm gonna use I have it in a plastic sheet, and I'm going to use just an Expo dry erase marker and mark what is in the foreground. In the front, that is the biggest. Okay, so this is something you could mark without a dry erase marker too, and just a regular one. So we have the front, the foreground here. The middle ground is the part that's in the middle of the foreground, the front and the back. So if I can go ahead and mark the background with the sky, then I find that I've already made my middle ground. It's in the middle. Middle ground. Foreground. Before comes first, and the background is in the back. Okay, so, and then also if you wanted to find your own foreground, middle ground, and background in a magazine. It's kind of fun. Some boats, some people working with crabs or abalones, and then a background that also is in a fishing town. But if I wanted to, I could have a very nonsensical foreground, middle ground, and background, and maybe put my ponies here in the front. So you can play around with it. But the big image goes in the front. That's how you know it's in the front. It's closest to you. The background would be the smallest, or the hills, or the horizon, or the sky, or the mountains. And then the middle is medium, middle ground. So that's just another activity, but mostly we're gonna have fun and paint like Grandma Moses did. So once we have our foreground, middle ground, and background, Grandma Moses actually started from the top to the bottom. She started in the sky. That's not normally how artists work, because the front overlaps. If you look, my hands are in front of my face, so you can't see all of my face, so it makes sense to draw that first. But Grandma Moses actually started in the back with the sky. So with my example, I have my hills that I drew, and I actually have a second set of hills here that are in front of my background set of hills, and they are lighter. So that's the other thing we're going to be working with, is tints and shades. A shadow is darker, so we can add, in this case with watercolor, more saturation of the color and less water. If we want it to be a tint and lighter, we can add more water. So I'm going to add my mountains. And these can be nice, simple sketches. I'm using my pencil pretty lightly in case I need to erase, but I will be painting over it, so that's okay if I make a mistake. And to tell you the truth, my first example, I didn't like it very much, and I thought I should be better at it because I'm an artist and I should know how to do something. And I remembered that Grandma Moses said, if anybody can paint or make art, and why should I know how to do this? I've never made a Grandma Moses piece of artwork, so we can give ourselves permission to make mistakes. I made my mountains in the background, and then I'm going to make a middle ground with some... She said she started with the sky and the mountains, and then she made trees and hills, and then she made buildings, and then people, or then cattle, then people. So people are the smallest and kind of the least important of her landscapes, which is interesting. All right, so I'm going to keep working on my middle ground here, and we will be right back. All right, so I added my middle ground. We're back together making art, and I'm going to put my foreground, which comes before my middle ground. It's the first thing, so it should be the biggest. In this, a person is not as large as a mountain. So I get to use perspective and scale to realize, okay, I know mountains are really big. So if this person is as big as the mountain, they must be closer to me. So I'm going to add, this person is making hanging clothes. So I used to do that when I was a kid in San Luis Obispo. So I am going to copy Grandma Moses, who also has some clothes hanging paintings. Add my clothesline here. Make sure I put my person in front of the clothesline. And I'm using my example from yesterday. You can use your memory, or in the beginning, Grandma Moses, like we said, used a lot of postcards and magazines to copy from. So that's a good place to start also. Okay, so that is where I'm going to stop with my drawing, and now we get to add some paint. I have my paintbrushes ready to make some art. I have 2 glasses of water. One I'm going to use for fresh water and one for mixing or getting my water and brush clean. And here are my favorite set of watercolors. As you can see, I'm messy. It's really fun to mix colors over here. I think Grandma Moses applied a lot of her colors directly, so we won't do a ton of mixing today. All right, I am going to use my larger paintbrush and pick up some water. Choose a color. I'm going to start in the back like Grandma Moses did with my mountains. Outline the darker mountains in the front. So there's no wrong way to do this. We're just doing our best. If I want it to be darker, I add more paint. It's more of a shade. The tints and the shade, those are art terms. So a shade means it's darker, has more shadow. You can add some black, but I prefer to just use more saturation, make it thicker paint. And it's going to be the lightest colors in the back. The tints are going to be lighter in the back, and the shades are going to be stronger in the front. So I might even come through with some of my paper towel if I decide that that is too dark, and I can take some of that color off. Okay, swish, swish, swish. I rinse out my paintbrush. And if I want some clean water, go over to my other jar, choose my lighter brown. For the mountain that is further away, it will be lighter. A lighter color and a lighter tint. I'm using long brush strokes for larger areas. I like to hold my paintbrush a little bit further up so it's looser. If I want a little more water, I go to the dirty water. If I'm using the same color. Okay, all we have to add is the sky now, so I'm going to do that on my own and we'll be right back. All right, now we are going to work on the middle ground, the meat of the sandwich. We have our foreground comes before in the front, our background is in the back, and then the middle ground is in the middle. So this is the lightest in the back because it's the furthest away. When you look out your window, you see the mountains and the sky out far away and it's kind of hazy. And the middle will have a little less detail than the foreground. Will have the most color and detail in the front. I'm going to use my smaller paintbrush for a little more detail and choose which colors I'd like to use. Grandma Moses used very bright colors. That's part of the playfulness of her artwork, which I really enjoy. I also noticed that she painted almost as if she were drawing. So a lot of painters have big sloppy brush strokes, and she used her paintbrush almost like a pencil in some ways, or a colored pencil. So I'm going through and just giving my middle ground some of my colors. The buildings, swish, 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 get some new water for a new color. Add my other building over here. And I can use short straight lines for these buildings. I'm running out of water, so I want to get a little more water. And I will fill in the rest also, but I want to show you how my watercolor pencils work. So I can go in and I can put my watercolor pencil in the water and go around the lines that I want and color in some of the color there, or I can use my paintbrush on top of the lines. And see, add a little more water. I can go back in with my watercolor pencil and go around where I want my fruits to be, the apples. So that's a fun tool. So I'm gonna work on this a little bit while you work on your middle ground, and we'll meet back up for the foreground that comes before. All right, now I'm going to begin on the foreground. I have my drawing and I have my middle ground and my background. I'm going to add a little more details on my middle ground after I do my foreground to just make sure that you can tell what's in the front, what's in the middle, and what's in the back. So again, I am using the darkest shades in the foreground. So I'm going to come in and choose very bright colors for the front. And I like to, like Grandma Moses, tell a story, a narrative, and part of that story is helping my eye move from one object to another. So I have some pink over here, magenta, whichever you'd like to call it. So I'm going to add some over here so that it creates some balance and some unity in our painting. A couple of principles of art, as well as just making it more fun and more colorful, like Grandma Moses. My grandma made artwork up until she was 96 when she passed away, and I have some of it hanging on my walls. Add a little bit of red here. I'm using mostly, not as like the least amount of water in this front part of my painting. I'm gonna add same color for my flowers here. I might dab them out with my paper towel to take some of the vibrancy away to make it look like it's further back. Now I'm going to add my brown with some new water for the clothesline. I'm having fun. I hope you are. Thank you for joining us today. All right, and then one other thing that I want to make sure of is that nothing looks like it's floating. So that way, I do want to make sure that I have a ground, an actual ground, not a foreground or a background, but a ground that this person is standing on, as well as the clothesline. One way to make green darker is to add some blue. So I'm going to add a little bit of blue in the front to make it a darker shade of green. Adding my grass here. I am going to also make hard lines around my objects so that I can tell where the background, what's in front. Is it the shirt or is it the grass? Okay, I'm going to keep working on this and I will meet you when we are done. I can leave some white in my painting if I like, or decide to add color there, but I'm pretty happy with my painting. You can always sign it down in the right bottom hand corner as the artist and put the date on there if you'd like. But anyone can paint who wants to paint. Anyone. Thanks for making art with me today.